Good afternoon and good morning to those of you on the West Coast, and welcome to our webinar today, 5 Steps to Create a Recreation Destination. My name is Emily Tipping. I'm the editorial director for Recreation Management Magazine. We're a publication covering facility management for recreation, sports, and fitness facilities, going out to 50 subscribers. We welcome you to subscribe too, but don't do that yet because we've got a great presentation for you today. Before we get started on that, I want to direct your attention to just a couple of items. In the resources module on your screen, you'll find a copy of today's presentation with all the slides for your reference, so you can keep that. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll find buttons for chat and Q&A. So feel free to talk with one another. And please, if you have any questions during today's presentation, stick those in the Q&A, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. One other note, if you're interested in receiving CEU credits for viewing this webinar, hang around. We'll put an email in the chat for you to reach out and get those CEU credits, and make sure you stay for the whole presentation. Now, today we have a fantastic presentation, lots of good stuff, presented by Ron Romans, president and founder of Commercial Recreation Specialists. Ron has 30 plus years of recreation expertise. He's the founder of Rave Sports. He's a waterfront attraction owner, a former campground owner. He's done so much in this space. And so he's got just a boatload of experience that we can draw on as you think about how you might want to develop your own waterfront. So let's get started. Take it away, Ron.
Thank you, Emily. I just want to say thank you for everyone attending here today. Coming right off the lunch hour, so hopefully we'll have some content that keeps you engaged and awake and add some value to your day. But we're very, excited to be here. Today's goal, is 5 steps to creating recreation destination. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to identify those 5 steps. And really, when we talk about recreation destination, we're really talking about open water, active recreation destinations. We're going to talk a little bit about the social, economic, and environmental benefits of open water recreation, some of the trends. We're going to break down those 5 steps into, site assessment and planning, destination and design, the destination design. We're going to identify opportunities on the water, opportunities surrounding the water, and opportunities beyond your water. We're going to take a look at some case studies, some operational case studies, talk a little bit about how some of these places are operated and monetized, and then we're going to conclude with time for question and answer towards the end. I also want to mention that we're going to reference we're going to have some survey questions that we'll be asking, and Emily will chime in with those. So that'll happen throughout the presentation. We'll have a few of those. And I think that we have one of those coming up, actually. Emily, you want to go ahead and take that?
Yes. So let's just get everybody started with some thinking. What stage of development is your site currently in? Choose what best describes your current situation. You don't have a vision. You do have a vision, but you don't know where to begin, rather. You have a site and want to expand or reimagine your amenities. You have a site and you're happy with what you've got, but you've always got your mind on future possibilities, or you're just not sure yet. So go ahead and click the one that is most suited to you. I would assume that today we've got a lot of people who are looking for ideas. Maybe you have a site already and you don't know what to do with it, or maybe you have a site that you want to redevelop. There's a lot of ways that you can bring new recreation opportunities to your site, and we will find out a lot more about all of those coming up here. So just go ahead and click A, B, C, or D and let us know where you're at. All right, we got a good number of you clicking now, so we're going to go ahead and see what you said. And it looks like most of you have a site and want to expand or reimagine your amenities. And a bunch of you are not sure. And about a fifth have a site, happy with what you got, eye on future possibilities. So all kinds of people here, Ron, looking for ideas today. So
That sounds great. Well, hopefully we can add some inspiration, uh, to what they're thinking and how they envision or reimagine their current sites, and how they might imagine a new site if that's what they're thinking, to have something new.
sounds good.
Emily, let me know when you're okay. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Thank you for filling out that survey question, everyone. We appreciate your participation. It certainly gives us a sense as to where folks are at in their process, and that's very helpful. So we want to talk specifically about open water recreation destinations. So they're recreational venues that intentionally and harmoniously integrate land and open water attractions centered around a natural or man-made body of water. Some of the key elements in an open water recreation destination is we want to bring people back to nature. We want to get them re-engaged with nature. We have a lot of nature deficit disorder, and COVID certainly has, over the last several years with COVID, that really jumped out, how people got back into nature. We've seen huge increases in families camping, major utilization of outdoor space, kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, biking, all those outdoor activities. So I think that was one of the positives that came back from COVID. It moved people back outside. It got them reconnected with nature, and that's a healthy thing. It's study after study shows that getting back to nature is really has some positive effects. Open water recreation destinations, we'll talk about, active and passive recreation, how to go ahead, and these destinations should address both parts of that recreation, from the active and the passive recreation side, and it should be done sustainably, right? So, recreation venues, as I said, that intentionally and harmoniously integrate land and open water attractions centered around natural or man-made bodies of water. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So years ago, it was much simpler. When I was a kid, it was a simpler time before computers and handheld devices. Recreation looked like this. I remember we rode our bikes out to the trout stream 2 miles out of town, and we were there for hours. We had a rope swing, we had a swimming hole, we turned over rocks, we caught crawdads. There was a lot of problems solved out at that trout stream at Creekside, and that was our own natural swimming hole. That was our own place. The amount of engagement, free play as kids, problem solving, it just, there was a lot of learning going on. And people learn through play. Play is a child's work, and I would say recreation is an adult's work. Recreation is so key to having a healthy outlook. So it used to be much, much simpler. There was not near as many distractions. Many things have changed, but people are undoubtedly still drawn to nature and the water to recreate. That certainly has not changed. Waterfront recreation has evolved into recreation destinations, which encompass entire environments, from main attractions and the necessities to luxurious accommodations, all centered around the natural water's edge. Some of the trends that we see in waterfront recreation, it's not just an attraction, but it's becoming an overall environment. Really, that open water recreation destination, you're really focusing on the entire environment, intentionally designed, making sure that we've got things like the food and beverage, shade, parking, plenty of seating, signage, and safety plans. So here's a location that we're participating in developing, but it really shows that successful open water recreation destinations today are intentionally designed. They're typically, we look at including 1 to 3 really primary attractions. Here you can see a large aqua park, a kids park. It's fun, challenging. They can be scaled to any size. They have high throughput. They can accommodate large or small groups. Other elements like zip lines and splash pads provide for primary attractions and serve different demographics and different skill levels. We want to also then include 4 to 7 secondary attractions, such as shallow zones and for smaller kids, beach game areas. Here you see a nice a landing for weddings, water slides, sand volleyball, cornhole, spike ball, cabanas, all geared around the waterfront. The attraction should offer a range of active and passive recreation. Should be designed to appeal to a broad a range of ages and demographics. It should have multi-generational appeal and offer inclusive activities. So you can see here with this, on this slide, we've done a lot of that, where this is a location, a park that's close to us here in Wisconsin, locally, but it was an existing quarry. And here you can see they've got deep water zones, they've got shallow water zones. We've got a playground transitioning over into a splash pad, which transitions into a beach with sunning deck spaces. We've got the concessions and changing rooms, excellent shallow water beach. There's swimming, boating, water slides, fishing pier, basketball, soccer field, shade structures, really both active and passive recreation, accommodating all of these age groups and tying it into the community with bike paths. This is a great park. I go down here actually often, and in the middle of the summer, you'll come and you'll see parents, you'll see elderly people in their 70s and 80s. They're under this concession stand, just watching the kids playing on the splash pad and back and forth on the playground. You'll see the teenagers on the sunning deck and at the fishing pier and playing basketball. So literally every age group and every demographic, really comes into play here. We've got sand play, family games, just so many different aspects to accommodate all those different age ranges. I want to touch on real quickly, when we're laying out spaces, when you're thinking about it, you want to be very intentional with focusing in on different zones. And zones facilitate flow to the attractions and to the use zones. It increases safety and provides optimal enjoyment. We want to consider aesthetics, the atmosphere, the noise levels. You can see here on this plan, we start with land-based attractions, and you can see there's a hub stage, there's a hub activity area. As you go around, there's Clearwater Beach, which is a game area, and there's a family beach space over here, as well as the Paradise Beach. You can see the slopes coming in, so the water is graded to a very intentional depth, with an aqua jogging course going around up at a little bit shallower zone. We've got deep zones coming off the Paradise Beach. We've got a squirt park over here with a splash pad and those types of things. So we have a lot of integrated, both the land-based and activities on and in the water. This particular site is really geared towards activating all of the space around the water. You're using it as a day use zone for large groups and opening it up, or being able to sector off areas or quadrants of the facility to accommodate specific groups. Also, you can see we built in the bump out areas for the event space for in the fall and things like that, like Oktoberfest or festivals and food trucks and things like that of that nature. So how do we activate that space on a seasonal, year-round level, not just how do you use that water during the summer, during the swim time? I want to touch on real quick some of the benefits of open water, nature-based recreation destinations. Benefits for people that are using them, benefits for the planet, and benefits for the pocketbook, right? Open water recreation is environmentally, economically, and socially sustainable. And really, nothing is really truly sustainable unless it can address and function on all of these three levels. It needs to be socially, environmentally, and economically if it's actually going to work and sustain itself for a period of time. So environmentally sustainable, many times we're leveraging an underutilized existing natural resource. So we're converting and revitalizing that natural resource. In other cases, we might be developing, building a lake from scratch, which may be a pasture, a cornfield, or it might be an outdated swimming pool or other park. They're economically sustainable. In all these cases, when they're used in a park and even in a day use area, what we see is a significant increase in utilization. It attracts businesses to the area and residents through quality of life. It generates tourism dollars and stimulates the economy through the businesses in town. Anytime that you are enhancing waterfront or adding waterfront, you're elevating the value of the real estate within that area. So it adds value to the real estate. Many times it's a much lower construction and operating cost than typical full-blown aquatic centers. And there's great benefit there. Year-round use. We think about how do we use that space and that water's edge on a year-round basis. Obviously people are drawn to water, but they're drawn to water in the off season, not just for swimming in it, but for events and activities such as ice skating and sledding and winter holidays and festivals and things like that. So from an economical standpoint, very sustainable. And then socially, what does this do socially? How does it build community? This type of recreation builds community through by creating social spaces that draw cross-generational populations. Literally, these type of parks, when you take your kids to a beach, you got everybody from a 1-year-old up to a 85-year-old grandparent just relaxing out at that water's edge, right? It's really geared towards families. I've got 5 kids myself, and I can tell you from raising those 5 kids, the only time that they're all happy is when we're downhill skiing, tubing behind the boat, or we're out at a beach doing something like this, where everyone can chart their own course and they can have very unscripted play and activity. Socially, it's bringing people back to nature. A lot of studies have shown the positive impact. Matter of fact, the Japanese art of forest bathing and other emerging ecotherapies recognize the positive health effects of exposure to nature. So it's really interesting. Through the studies, they're basically validating what I've known my entire life growing up in the country. Nature heals you. It builds community. It brings people back to a better place. Socially, it utilizes and revitalizes unused spaces, which were potentially unsafe. So it revitalizes those spaces. A lot of times brings a new group of clientele. It might be discouraging crime, those types of things. So let's get into the 5 steps of how we're going to get this done and kind of what that process is. So I'm going to start with the site assessment and planning. And I think this type of a project is pretty similar to most projects. You need to take a very good inventory of your assets. What type of body of water do I have? Is it a lake? Is it a quarry? Is it a river? Is it a pond? Do I want to build a body of water? What type of infrastructure do I have? Do I have restrooms and storage buildings and pavilions, bleachers? What's my site access? Where am I in proximity to the properties around me? Can I break out enough space to create parking and those types of things? So how do I fit in regards to my adjacent properties? Where am I in proximity to residential areas or commercial areas? Are there other nearby attractions, that might compete with this, or other things that are causing sound or noise or pollution? As I'm assessing that site, who are my user groups? Those are local residents. What's my season? How am I going to use this? What's my population of surrounding residents? Do I plan on bringing tourists in and having day use at this park or this facility? So who currently visits? Who's visited in the past? Who are you hoping to draw in? So all great questions in doing the site assessment. With some of the infrastructure, what's my soils look like? What are my sewer, my water, my sanitary needs, my electricity? How difficult is this going to be? Is it there, or am I going to have to run this? What is my climate? We operate a location out on Lake Michigan in Whiting, Indiana. And we had to take a really close look at when the prevailing winds, where they are, and what time of year, and how much wind we're having for this large body of water. So what's my climate, my wind? And then is there any historical context of the region? What's happened in this site in the past? And is there any, things with regards to its history? And then lastly, really thinking about zoning and permitting. Obviously each state, county, and federal land, federal waters, state waters, private waters all have different zoning. So start by assessing the variables. Then with that, you can create a feasibility study, can be conducted to analyze the strengths and weaknesses, do a SWOT analysis of the site to determine what are the operational models that we can use. How do we want to monetize this? Or do we want this as a pure amenity? So really starts with that first basic site inventory and site assessment. So then we want to think you've thought about what's the current site is, what's going on with the site, how that's all happening, and how you're getting a vision on how this could happen. So one of the next things is, based off the site assessment, what makes sense for your venue? How would you go about enhancing an existing waterfront? Is it overgrown with weeds? Is there a lot of muck? Do we have to dredge it? Do we got to increase the water depths? What are those slopes, to get usable water depths for deep water, shallow water, active areas, passive areas, shoreline development and restoration? Do I want to put in elevated beaches, or are they zero entry beaches? So really, how would you reimagine that existing waterfront, or even how would you reimagine that old swimming pool that's 40 years old and it's outdated? Or do we want to build the body of water from scratch? So this slide shows, as we're laying out a design, kind of the process. We went through the site assessment, we started laying this out, we understand the body of water, the depths, what attractions are going into where, and then we've got to say, okay, we're going to go ahead and make this body of water. It's going to be man-made. What are our existing topographies and elevations? If you're making a man-made body of water for recreation use, you want to make sure that the rain water and runoff is not going into that body of water. Runoff provides a lot of the organics, which help algae blooms and things like that. This water needs to be its own entity. rainwater runoff needs to move around it. So the grading plans, the shapes, how we're going to aerate and circulate that water, how we're going to treat that water to keep it safe, to keep it healthy, and to have a good, ecosystem within that body of water. So a lot of times we want to consider mimicking natural elements like flowing water over rocks. So we want to aerate and circulate that water and create opportunities for that to happen, maybe even building in some natural biofilters, but using beneficial bacteria and enzymes to create a healthy, swimmable body of water. So opportunities on your water. So the next area is, we want to take a phased approach. We kind of understand what's going on around it. We're starting to design it. Now we're taking a look at the opportunities on the water itself. So, there's a lot of different things that we can put out there, activities such as large aqua parks and these new peaks, floating cabanas, docks, those, SUPs, pedal boats, water mats and tubes, aquatic climbing structures, small watercrafts, individual rental islands and floating cabanas. There's a ton of areas for how you're going to use, ton of opportunity for how you use that existing on the water and then in the water, even creating, sunken beaches and aqua game areas for floating volleyball, floating spike ball, different just activity zones. We've got, I think the next slide shows a video of an aqua park. So it'll have a little bit of music to it, but it shows a park in action and operating, and we'll just touch on that, how that's feasible after we run a short video. Here you go.
Back once again, back once again, back once again, back once again, back once again with a beat, back once again with a beat, let the bass kick.
All right, that's great. So I'm going to just touch real quick when we get into a primary attraction like an aqua park, how are one of these elements designed, what's important for that. And so I just want to touch on that real quick, because a lot of times these type of elements floating on the water, these modular park systems, are very much a primary attraction. So what we want to do is we want to focus and make sure that we have a level of challenge for every age group, right? So we want to select water elements that are linked together to create these challenges for all ages and all abilities. And you could see in that video how we also want to build in entrances and steps for where those exits are. So we want to create rotations of play. The idea here is to keep people on the product going through the course in a self-directed way, that they can really have unscripted play. They can play together as a group, as a family, or they can go off and do their own thing. So we want to create rotations of play, and we want to create wherever there's exits, we want to make sure that we have entrances as well. Here you can see a smaller course that will accommodate about 60 people. And you notice that all of these pieces are modular, right? So these can all be linked and put together a lot like Legos. What's great about that is we can utilize a phased approach to accommodate the capacity, the throughput that's desired, and the budget that is currently in place. It also enables you to very quickly expand this. At several of the locations that we operate, we've actually needed more capacity, so we shipped 6 or 7 additional products and put on another loop to spread people out and add capacity in the middle of summer. It's not a long lead time to build something with infrastructure. The facility is built, the water is there. So the question is, how do we activate that water? Here you can see we take those same pieces from that small to medium-sized course, and we make a much larger course out of it, expanding the capacity. So you can evolve over time, highlighting, the modularity, the future expansion, and increasing that throughput and capacity. No infrastructure change, just the addition of some modular pieces. In the last several years, a product has come out called Peaks, which is, it's really a revolutionary new line of aquapark. It was inspired by high ropes courses, and these sections linked together, they provide a different level of challenge for the users. This really, what we've seen is the teens and the young adults, that challenge to get from peak to peak has really been exciting. In the background here, you see a large mountain. This will accommodate 12 people at a time with slides coming off 4 or 5 sides. They're great pieces as a standalone center attraction or integrated into an overall system. Here you see the modularity and how in the Peaks type product, how it can grow and go from a year to year. It can be added to an existing park. It can be a standalone park or a standalone attraction. But really, different thrills, different skills, different level of challenge that keep bringing people to the next place wanting to come back. The other aspect about, this type of play is, here we have floating cabanas, docks, kayaks, pedal boats. This type of play, it really is self-directed. People go at their pace. There are no lines. The throughput happens as they want to engage with it. Very modular, very expandable. Stand-up paddle boards, water mats, floating climbing walls, all fun ways to activate that on-water space. How are we using that water? So then we want to create, we've looked at the water. We say, okay, we need the different water depths for deep and shallow. We've got our slopes figured out, what our grades are going to be, what our water depths are. Now we want to look at opportunities around the water, okay? So how do we take a phased approach to that? Once we get the facility built, how can we bring things in to accommodate, and how can we scale it? Or if we have the budget and we're geared towards day use, how do we just put it all there at once? So we want to create passive recreation zones for the varying demographics. We want these zones to extend how people, enjoy the water. Here's a great picture of mom in a very comfortable chair. You guys have all seen the umbrella and chair at the beach. So creating your own beach, your own shade, your own comfort zone for mom or other folks, while the kids can go back and forth where they want to go. Integrating, beach cabanas and furniture, zoom flumes, using turf in some cases. But what I've seen over the years is, putting sand and grass between people's toes, they relax so much. They just bring their guard down as compared to chlorine and concrete. This type of environment is very, very dynamic. When kids come, when families come, depending on the weather, the wind, the number of people, there's always changing. Sand play, water play, it's a very dynamic environment. It's constantly changing. Again, we want to take a look at phased implementation of the cabanas and expansions. Here we have zoom flume water slides. We took the spoils from the lake, built a hill. We've got slides going down, food and beverage, game areas, sand play areas. The leisure, the shoreside shade creates and it facilitates adults while the kids play. We want to create a comfortable space for everybody, obviously. So now we're going to get into, we looked at right around that water's edge, how are we using that, activating that space, using it in the different seasons for events or the high summer season where all the activity is right next to the water and in the water, where the fall, it might be, festivals and activities and different things like that. So we want to take a look at that now with the opportunities beyond the water. Again, thinking about many times a phased approach that is possible. So splash pads, accessible water play for those with varying levels of ability, pavilions and amphitheaters and event spaces. So creating that center hub, that gathering place with green space in front of it or alongside of it, a hillside type thing, or creating that amphitheater. The shelters, shade, playgrounds, we have to think about the picnic areas. A lot of people come, you want to spread them out around. So let's give them spaces to enjoy nature. The restroom facilities with showers and changing space, open green space, as I mentioned, for families. Things like pedal carts and pedal cart tracks, non-motorized, a track can be made out of gravel or pavement, but a great activity. We really want to try to get people to these spaces for 3 to 6 hours during the day, right? Where they come to a space like this and they're really coming there for the day. They're making a day trip out of it. Or if it's a campground or something like that, it really is drawing them to make this their destination where they want to camp. Many times the kids are deciding where we're camping, where we're staying, based on the amenities. So we got to keep them entertained, on the water, around the water, and outside the water on the land. Mini golf, disc golf, kangaroo jumpers, all of these are aspects that many are not high dollar, but really give people places to move to and to go to and to plan in order to make it a 3 to 6 hour day. Now here we see shade shelters, family game spaces such as cornhole, ping pong, aerial bridges and zip lines. A great way to get people moved out into nature, outside within that park area, within that facility, out in that natural environment. Excellent. So we went over a little bit about site assessment, a little bit about the design and some design criteria and phasing approaches. We identified, locations on and around the water and also on the land. So now we're going to jump into a couple of case studies. We're going to look at Darlington County Park in New Jersey, a couple of city park or municipal or public projects, and then several private projects. This one, Darlington Park, has been in operation for about 3 years. Today, Darlington Park averages about 1,500 visitors per day. The Aqua Park attendees, the people coming down to this attraction, represent about 25% of overall visitors. They monetize this by utilizing splash sessions, splash zone sessions, and they run through about 50 to 75 people per session. And they have about anywhere from 5 to 7 sessions a day. So while revenue generation wasn't a top priority, their main priority was increasing utilization of the overall park, getting people back out into nature. The revenue came as very much a pleasant surprise as it increased utilization and people wanted to come and pay to use this type of attraction. They have in the early stages, in laying this course out for them, they actually have 3 lakes on this larger park. This was a lake that was not being utilized. It was man-made. They had another swimming lake north of it. So we just developed a very basic plan for passive and active zones, a deep water zone for adults, a shallow water zone for the kids, game space area, safety and lifeguarding area, the entrance and the exits. And very simple, really quite a simple plan that they were able to implement. And like I say, they've been at it for 3 years and they've increased the utilization every year, and they've actually expanded their park every year. So it's been a very safe place for people to come, enjoy the outdoors, get into water, and, you know, additionally generate some revenue. This is Clintonville, actually a park up here in Wisconsin. They had an old wading pool that had shut down for several years. They really didn't, we're looking at an aquatic center, but an aquatic center was well out of their reach. So we went ahead and used that existing site, and we designed a man-made lake with a swim beach, hillside. They'll use this lake now. It was envisioned that this would be used for ice skating in the winter and family recreation in the summer. During the summer, they do have, I believe, day passes for the locals, and then they do charge a fee for people coming, and you know, day use fees as well. We've got the space, as I said, was re-envisioned as a purely recreational swim pond with inflatable aqua park space, a large beach, swim dock, shade structures. All of these elements were part of that master plan. So we created the basic bubble diagrams, identifying what the elements are, how they're going to be utilized, how they could fit the space. And then the next step was dropping those elements in and bringing a little bit more life to it. This location is actually built and was open this year. They've got it excavated, graded, the entire project was completed, and then this next summer they're going to start adding and phasing in more of these recreation elements, more of these attractions. This is a space up in called Land of Natura, where they had an empty land, empty cornfield, and they turned it into a mystical day use facility. Site plans called for a natural pond with features of an aqua park and, you know, islands in the center with wetland spaces. It's 200 acres of land along the Wisconsin River, and it actually encompasses many, many attractions within the facility. So this was their very basic plan that they started with, you know, creating the visioning process and what they were thinking of doing and how the water would be the center of attention for this space to get people out into Natura. Here's a top-down drone image of the construction process. After they graded this, they got their welcome facility, their parking lots in. And this was open this season. This shows a typical day out at the Land of Natura, where they're seeing anywhere from, you know, upwards of 1,000 people a day. You see their primary concession buildings with their food and beverage, some very, very adequate parking. The front of this property will end up being some sports fields and things in the future. They have a lot of, the property's 200 acres. So a lot of these folks are condensed around the lake here. But there's also treetop tours. There's disc golf. There'll be mini golf, game areas. The key is people are drawn to the water, and that's the primary attraction. All of these other elements are envisioned to keep people at the space or to attract them in the shoulder season months. So we actually took our company outing to Land of Natura, about 85 of us earlier in the year. And we had grandparents, parents, young kids, grandkids. Everybody was on this lake and throughout this environment the entire day. My business partner actually asked one of my staff's daughters, an 8-year-old, said, "How are you having fun today?" And she looks up at him and says, "This is great. I think I'm going to live here forever." So that was just like, you know, from a kid's perspective, that is just absolutely amazing how big and how active this space is. They have a lot of features like the aerial bridges. You know, as I mentioned, you know, here's the zoom flume slides coming down into the lake. So they were able to create literally a back to nature oasis out of a previously empty lot. So this is a video of a location out in, go back one. This is a video of a location out in the Carolinas. I've got the video come up. That was activated this space. This is a quarry that was basically trees and rocks. And the owners came in, designed elevated beaches, floating docks, deep zone spaces. This is being utilized as a day use area as well. You can see the game areas with turf, the family zones, all of these different zones that we're talking about. So really a beautiful spot. The beach here at Fantasy Lake, actually they brought in 40 tractor trailers of sand from Topsail Beach to create that environment. This is a project out in the Dakotas that we worked on over the past couple of years, where they took basically an old fairgrounds and they're looking at creating this 3-acre lake. And doing several designs, how to integrate some housing around it, walking paths, all of these different zones, use zones, where this would be a tourist attraction and a day use spot during the summer. And then in the off season, the residents would be using this as a regular park and festival type event space. This is actually the space of that fairgrounds prior to laying this out. It actually, through the feasibility study, they determined that the space wasn't large enough, and they actually went to they bought another piece of ground outside of town to keep moving forward with the development. We got a few more questions on the surveys. Emily?
We do. We have another poll question for you guys to check and make sure you're still with us. So what are the main hurdles that you foresee in transforming your site into a recreation destination? Are you struggling with developing a business plan or operational model? Are you struggling to deal with regulatory, site use, zoning, and permitting issues? Are you having a hard time finding the right people for your team, including financial, accounting, business consultants, engineers, and architects? Or are you looking for a better understanding of the process and available opportunities? So go ahead and click the thing that you think is the biggest challenge for you. I would guess a lot of you are thinking, just based on what we get back in our annual survey every year, budget. A lot of people, we leave that response off sometimes on some of the questions about the biggest challenges for facilities, because the first thing people are going to pick is, the budget. So we're giving you some other choices here. And let us know. And we've got a good number of people responding, so let's see what you said. It looks like regulatory, site use, zoning, permitting got around a third of the people, but half are just seeking to understand the process and the available opportunities. So that's why you're here. So let's turn things back over to Ron then and keep things going.
That sounds good. All right. Thank you, Emily. We're going to move this through pretty quick to get to, where do you start in this process? All right. So setting your goals, identify and setting clear goals, for early on or for long-term success, the age groups, who do you want to serve, how you're going to use this site. Are you aspiring to directly generate revenue? Will it be an independent day use situation? Will it be run by your city park staff? If it's a city or public entity, will it be a public-private partnership? How do you envision using this space, and how do you envision operating this space? Success through participation. understand the partners and the key players, and who you need to make this to make this work. What are the skill sets that you're going to have, and establish a shared vision. Understanding what space is available. Assess your environment, the overall measured area, your water depths, as we talked about, understanding, getting an inventory of your assets. What's your budget? A small investment can yield a big return, especially when it's phased. So if you're phasing it, where are you going to get the most bang for the buck? Where are your highest priorities, that you need to, what do you need to develop for the community? If it's a independent business, where do you get your highest return on investment? How do you get enough in there so if you are on a limited budget, that you can incrementally build this and get your ROI generated? So affordable phasing plans allow your waterfront attraction to grow with your business. What's your time frame? How soon do you want to yield a return? What are your facilities' operating hours or season? Factor in your construction time before your open date. How long can you be down, before you need to start generating revenue? Can you use the incremental phasing to begin seeing ROI on this? I think the thing I want to stress is very intentional planning and design. Here's a case where there's an existing body of water, out along the Jersey Shore. They put in floating docks and built this entire park, within the marina spaces, right? Very well laid out, very well designed, excellent throughput. Here's another space where they actually created some additional waterway and went in and developed the beach to an existing pond. Are you going to create a space or utilize existing? And get the help you need. As I mentioned, site visibility, feasibility, 3D renderings, layouts, operations, and consulting. Really, the same criteria that goes through most all projects really apply to this as well. It's being intentional about it. So we're kind of wrapping up here. We're moving through. I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions on the end. So we'll go ahead, we'll move into questions for the last 7 or 8 minutes. So Emily, if you want to, or if you have some coming up in chat, but I'll let you kind of take the floor there a little bit.
All righty, we have gotten a lot of questions throughout the presentation. So from Greg, near the beginning of the presentation, he wants to know, are there waterfront attractions that can be used or adapted for accessibility for visitors with disabilities?
There is actually, and so knowing that that's what you want to use it for, there's a lot.
Ron, I'm going to interrupt you here because we lost your sound. Hang with us, folks. We've got some technical difficulties. You guys may have noticed that we just lost Ron's sound for just a second, so I think they're going to get him set back up here. Nope, we still don't have you. Terry, I see that you're asking if the webinar will be emailed to you. We
Technical
will follow
issue.
up with an email following the
Can you hear me, Emily?
presentation. Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, great. All right, you can hear me, correct?
Yep, we got you. We got you back.
All right, great. So the accessibility question, there definitely is ways that we can design spaces for, to make this very universal and accessible. Knowing that people are in life jackets and the different use zones and water depths and slopes. But we need to design to it, and it needs to be done intentionally.
Okay, on
Another
the
question?
subject of life jackets here from Ryan. Ryan wanted to know, what is the recommended minimum age for an aqua park or a Whibbit park when all users are wearing personal flotation devices or life vests? Is there an age limit?
So the recommended age, there is. It's typically 7 and over for the deep water parks. And then we've created kids parks for 7 and under. It's a height of 48 inches or 7 years old and over in the Whibbit parks. That's what the manufacturer recommends. And everyone in the park should have a life jacket on. And then, like I say, then we've created these smaller kids parks that can be put in 3 feet of water. Those are typically ages anywhere from 4 to 7, kids with life jackets, and the parents go out into that area with them, and they can wade in the water while the kids are going around on the park.
Got it. Okay, Joe is asking, he says, we're discussing how to change to use our floating water park area. He says, do you recommend by the hour, season, or just a full day pass for the visitors? We're trying to prepare for the volume and how to handle it and not be overloaded so everyone would have plenty of access. I'm looking for the best rate of return.
Yeah, so I think that's not an easy answer. A lot of it is, if you own the facility and you control the water and you can control the gate, that might be one business model. We operate parks through public-private partnership where it's a state park, and the people are there at the beach. So with that, the people are paying to get into the park, and then we do an hourly basis. Other parks that can control, the people coming in, they'll have maybe a charge to get into the park, and then they'll have a secondary gate, of several dollars, and they'll schedule their time and get a wristband for that time. So they have access to the facility, and they can kind of a la carte, buy these, or they can have a day pass for an elevated rate that allows them to go on and off that park as they please. A lot of it depends on what your throughput needs to be, how many people that you're going to have, and you may start with one model, and as it grows in popularity, you might move to another. Okay, so I'd be happy if, Joe, if you want to send me an email or have a conversation, be happy to talk about the varying models, what we see, and depending on what else you have, where you're pulling people from, what your intention is, that's going to drive some of that decision making.
All right.
Not a clear cut answer, but
everybody does it different.
There's a lot of options. There's 3 or 4 options, I think, that people use that seem to work well.
Got it. So Terry Clayton is asking, how do you find a location? If she says, is it better to go through a city or private?
Yeah, I think, finding the location is a challenge. Identifying cities, identifying old quarries, those are, talking to cities, asking if they have locations that are underutilized that they'd like to have developed. I've had people that have looked for a location and they've just gone out and bought a piece of ground and dug their own lake, and created the location, which that scenario gives them the most flexibility on what happens there and the most control. So finding the location is a challenging part of it, but there's a lot of sleuthing that goes on to find a good location that's usable, either public or private. So it's really a lot of research goes into finding locations.
Okay. From Charisse, do you have any idea what percentage of people usually pay to jump on the structures on a lake? She says her lake currently sees 60,000 to 70,000 people through the course of Memorial Day to Labor Day weekend, and she's curious if she'd be looking at 1/8 of these folks, less, more. How many will pay to get through to the Whibbit Park?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, what will happen is you'll have people that are not lake users coming to the Whibbit Park to the beach. That will draw them there for their day use or for an activity. So we're seeing anywhere from, you know, 7,000 up to over 20,000 people coming, you know, to the parks that we operate. Usually those people are within a 90-mile radius. Our Whiting Park in Whiting, Indiana, I was amazed when a number of years ago we ran through the numbers, and 13% of the attendees, we put through about 22,000 people, 13% of the participants came from more than 90 miles away to come and play on this park. So a lot of it is the demographics within a 15, 30, 60, 90-mile radius, and who's being drawn to that lake currently. Also, a lot of it is access to the water and then having the available parking. So when they come, that they've got a place to park and you can accommodate them. Because you'll get very big bumps on your weekends. And when you get above 80 degrees, you know, you have a flood of people. And if you're down at, 70 degrees, people are going to stay home and mow their lawn. So you have to be ready for that capacity, or you have to have the inventory when the people are coming.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question. Mary Beth is asking, do you need to have a filtration system and chemicals for the man-made lake?
So that's kind of one of the neat things that about this type of recreation. There are no chemicals. Okay, so there is not a filtration system, or there may be a filtration system, but they would be, natural biofilters. So, for example, wetland plantings that filter the water. The waters are treated with aeration, oxygenation, circulation, and treated through beneficial bacteria. Usually we work with an aquatic biologist. They test the water and they write a prescription or a plan on how to manage this body of water to make it a good swim quality lake, right? So chemicals are not used. There's no chlorine, there's no acids and things like that. It truly is, you're creating a natural ecosystem. Typically locations test their water every couple of days. That gets sent in to get the, the different bacteria counts. And we've been doing it now for in excess of 20 years, and we've seen incredible results with, maintaining good water quality, swimmable water quality. And, you also look at all the city lakes, the state parks, the county parks that have their beaches. People have been swimming in natural water for, forever. But there are no chemicals, and usually it's managed through aquatic biology and lake and pond water management.
Okay, I think we are going to wrap things up here. So I'd like to send a big thank you to Ron and to the whole team at Commercial Recreation Specialists who put this presentation together, as well as our behind the scenes team here at Rec Management. And I'd especially like to thank all of you for attending and making this such a great back and forth today. We will be sending out a link to the recording over the next few days, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, check out our next webinar coming up on October 5th on choosing the right water management system for your spray park. Don't forget to head over to recmanagement.com and sign up for a free subscription if you're not already a subscriber. And thanks again. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Emily, and thanks everyone for joining us. And, I would mention if you have questions and you're thinking about going down this path and you want to have a conversation, feel free to shoot us an email. Happy to talk about this form and type of recreation. Fantastic. Thank you.